Welcome to today's explainer of the source material. Today, we're taking a really deep look into Johann Heltzel, though you probably know him as Falco. Now, if you're like most people, you probably know him for that one ridiculously catchy 80s song. But here's the thing. There is this massive discrepancy between how the world remembers him and who the man actually was. Let's dive in.
Take a look at this quote. Wenn ich einmal tot bin, werden sie mich lieb haben, which translates to, when I am dead, they will love me. It's originally from the Austrian writer Helmut Kollingdinger, but it became deeply, almost uncomfortably tied to Falco's own outlook on life. It's just such a prophetic statement, you know? It really hints at the tragic, wildly visionary nature of an artist who spent so much of his life feeling completely unappreciated for his actual depth. And this right here perfectly illustrates that divide. To the international market, especially in America, Falco is kind of the ultimate 80s one-hit wonder. You know, the guy who rapped about Mozart over a catchy dance pop beat. But the reality in Austria is entirely different. Over there, he is celebrated as an uncompromising avant-garde genius. They literally call him the David Bowie of Austria. He's seen as an absolute pioneer who took local dialect and fused it with global rap. Section 1. Vom Underground zum Popstar. From the underground to pop star. So Falco actually emerged from the boheme. This was a subculture that was actively, loudly rebelling against conservative norms. I mean, get this. He actually dropped out of the super prestigious Vienna Conservatory of Music just so he could play bass in anarcho-punk bands. He completely rejected the traditional, expected path because he wanted to become this raw, unfiltered artist instead. Just listen to this lyric from his 1981 track, Ganz Wien. All of Vienna is on heroin today. It was this gritty, proto-rap observation of urban decay and drug addiction right in Vienna's underbelly. And he wasn't glorifying the lifestyle at all. He was just holding up an unflinching mirror to society. Well, the result? It was heavily boycotted by Austrian radio. But that exact boycott is what officially put his solo career on the map. And his trajectory over the next few years was just staggering. From a boycotted punk bass player in 1981, he absolutely skyrocketed to global fame, hitting #1 on the US charts just 5 years later with Amadeus. But, as we'll see, this turbulent journey was destined to come to an abrupt and deeply tragic end in 1998.
Section 2. Die Kunst des Falconizings. Falconizing. That's the actual term used to describe how he elevated his material. Because Falco didn't just sing songs, right? He possessed them. He completely transformed tracks with his incredibly unique lyrics, this intense theatrical performance, and just an undeniable swagger. He was creating a sound that was meant to be felt right in your bones, rather than strictly understood word for word. The ingredients of this formula were actually highly specific. He used this wild, postmodern collage of languages, mixing German, English, Italian, and French together like pieces of a ransom note. Then, he layered in heavy Viennese dialect, known as Wiener Schmäh, which gave it this gritty local authenticity. On top of that, he packed his verses with pop culture references, dropping names from David Bowie to Raymond Chandler. And he delivered the whole shebang with a syncopated proto-rap style. He was literally pioneering a form of European hip-hop years before it hit the global mainstream. Section 3. Decadence and social critique. Because behind all those catchy beats, Falco was actually a biting social commentator. A perfect example of this is his song Titanic. He uses the sinking ship as a metaphor for modern society's absolute obsession with luxury and status. The song paints this really ironic picture of humanity literally dancing the waltz while the ship goes down. It's a remarkably sharp critique of our superficiality in the face of inevitable disaster. And then there was Genie. This was a song that pushed major boundaries and sparked massive controversy. Falco basically took on the terrifying persona of a psychopathic kidnapper talking to his victim in the woods. It sparked huge boycotts, and news anchors and women's rights groups rightfully condemned it. But at the same time, it revealed his capacity for highly cinematic, deeply dark storytelling. The source material notes that it wasn't an endorsement of violence. It was more like controversial method acting pushed to the absolute limits of pop music. Moving on to Section 4. Versteckte politische Botschaft. Hidden political messages. Take his 1986 track, The Sound of Music. At this point, Falco was completely exhausted by the Amadeus image and desperately wanted to reinvent himself. Now, on the surface, the song sounds like a fun tribute to the unifying power of music. But underneath, the source material reveals he actually disguised a direct anti-totalitarian critique of a highly controversial Austrian politician of that era. It was this brilliant lyrical puzzle aimed at the 1986 Austrian presidential candidate Kurt Waldheim, who was facing severe controversy over his wartime past. Falco actually hid his critique right in the opening lines. Look at step 1. It begins in a forest, and in German, the word for forest is Wald. Step 2, and it ends at home. In German, Heim. Step 3, put them together and you get Waldheim. It's crazy. It was an almost invisible political protest hidden right inside an upbeat pop track.
But he also looked outward with immense hope. In his posthumously released track Europa, which was recorded in the mid-90s, he addresses the daughters of Europe frank and free. This really showcased his visionary pro-integration stance on the European Union and the opening of the East. He saw himself deeply as a European, and he was celebrating a generation that could finally experience cultural unity without the horrors of war.
Section 5. I am posthumous Albert. A posthumous legacy. Despite his undeniable brilliance, Falco struggled immensely with the sheer weight of his own fame. His public persona was this polished, arrogant pop star, kind of styling himself after David Bowie's thin white dupe. But the reality was a deeply frustrated artist who felt completely trapped by that Amadeus image. He knew he couldn't repeat that freak US success. And as he tried to reinvent himself in the 1990s, he faced commercial flops that deeply, deeply affected his spirit. Tragically, 40 is the age Johann Holzel was when his life was cut short. In 1998, he died in a car crash in the Dominican Republic. His sudden death completely shocked the world. And as is so often the case with avant-garde artists, it sparked an immediate and massive reevaluation of his art. Suddenly, the very establishment that had once boycotted him began to revere him as a national treasure. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. Did the world simply misunderstand Falco, dismissing him as just another 80s novelty act? Or was he actually light years ahead of his time, a postmodern genius weaving dialect, rap, and social critique together long before the rest of us ever caught on? Hopefully, diving into the source material today has shown you the remarkably deep, complex artist who was hiding right in plain sight all along. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the true art of falconizing.